Hello, everyone. It's Steve. We are now focusing once again on emotional intelligence with business coach and advisor Frank Du. Hello, Frank.
Hi, Steve. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. It's always a pleasure. We have
Likewise,
good talks.
definitely.
And today we're going to continue our talk on emotional intelligence. And this is very much applicable to people that run and build businesses. But of course, it's applicable to people that are not self-employed because it's, as you're stressing, it's key to growth.
Exactly.
Today, we're going to focus on methods for developing self-awareness. You have been stressing to us the importance of self-awareness, and it naturally leads to a question, well, how do I do that? So I'd like to ask you to start by offering methods and techniques for doing so. What do you
Sure.
think?
Okay. Yeah, and just sort of generally overview, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And so being self-aware takes practice. And, you know, from the dawn of time, humans have been wired, our brains are wired with neural pathways. And, the neural pathways have been designed for survival. And, is it good or is it bad? Should I run away, or is this a friendly lion? And, so having that sort of awareness that our brains are, our neural pathways are wired a certain way for survival, it leads us to believe that we're just sort of going to react to things, but those reactions are really thoughts first, and after every thought comes the feeling, and sometimes it feels like there is no thought, that I just feel a certain way, and but the reality is that for those feelings, there's what some people call automatic thoughts. So thoughts that happen so quickly that the neural pathways in our brains are so used to that thought zipping through that highway in your head that produces a feeling. And so we might not catch the thought; we'll just feel the feeling. And but it's that feeling that is the red flag for you to increase your self-awareness. Does that make sense to you?
I will be honest with you, half it does. Why isn't it the thought that also creates a need to be self-aware? I mean, if a certain thought is triggering a certain feeling, and the feeling's not really appropriate or not the one you want, why not get down to the thought first?
Well, it's interesting because it's usually the feeling that we notice more so than the thought.
Right.
And so, after sort of I go through this process of understanding how to process the feeling, it takes you back to the thought. And so sometimes, yes, over time, you have a greater self-awareness, a greater emotional intelligence for yourself, that you have the thought, and then you can go through the discernment right there and then. But many times the thought zips right through us and we just have the feeling. And so based on that, it's the time for self-awareness is, when you feel anxious, you feel angry, you feel stressed, you feel fear, happiness, excitement, any of those feelings. Once you recognize that you have a feeling, that's when you can step back and say, what was that thought prior to that? And so, and we think of those feelings. I'm not sure if I mentioned this the last time, but we think of those feelings as just not really having any connection with the thought. But when you think of them as a red flag for what was the thought, and to bring you to the discernment of that, think of it as, if you put your hand on a hot stove, then you know that your hand's starting to burn. So you take your hand off the stove, and that the sensation that you feel in your hand with the heat, that's the warning signal, that's the red flag that you should do something. And so with emotional intelligence, same thing. It's not the hand on the stove, it's the awareness of the feeling. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so when you go through that process, you know, how do you become more, when you are aware of that feeling, what do you do with it?
Right. That's my question. How do I trace the route that was
Exactly.
taken?
Yeah.
Right.
And like it those feelings are different for everybody with every situation. And so once you recognize the feeling and the intention of recognizing that feeling, then you can really, I think we talked about this before too, is you step back and do some version of a slow meditation, feel your breath, listen to a sound, um, you know, feel a rock, feel your fingers, just even 30 seconds to give your give yourself a chance to reset before you act. And so, and as far as emotional intelligence goes, when you can catch yourself with a feeling and then as quickly as possible recognize that and then move into that moment that you gather yourself, ground yourself, and take yourself back to the present. And so for some people, that's, a big deep breath. Sometimes it's, rub a rock or tap a pen, whatever it happens to be that works for you to take you back to that moment. And once you come back to that moment, you're back to what you were talking about, and that is a choice. So you can go through the discernment of the thought that brought you there in the first place. And so that discernment is back to the survival scenario is, is this good or is it bad? And that's a perspective. And so, I'm going to sort of just shorten this story a little bit, but there's a story about a farmer who, raised horses, and they were just workhorses, but he had this one horse that turned out to be quite a stallion. He was unbelievably fast, and his buddies decided to say, well, why don't you put him in the races? And so he said, sure, I guess so. So he puts them in the race. And so he turns out to be the fastest horse in the country. And he's doing really, really well. And, his friends come back to him and say, you must be so proud of the horse. It's such a wonderful thing. And he says, I don't know, is it good or is it bad? It's hard to say. But right now it's nice. And he's definitely. And so then the horse goes for another race and breaks his leg. And so because the horse was more like a pet to begin with, they don't put the horse down, they keep the horse. And then the friends find out, it's really, really bad that the horse isn't winning all this money for you and winning these races. And he said, I don't know, is it good or is it bad? It's hard to say. And then a war breaks out. And the government comes and conscripts all the horses in the country. When they come to his farm, they don't take his horse because it had a broken leg. Is it good or is it bad? So you just don't know each situation, each scenario, as we go through a thought, is it good or is it bad? And so on the other end of that, we make a choice. And so that choice is, where is the gift or opportunity in the thought that we have? And so we can automatically assume perhaps that it's bad, but it's not necessarily bad if you step back and look at where the gift or opportunity is. So, with the horse as an example, it turned out to be great that he broke his leg because then he didn't go off to war. So we were faced with a lot of these things in life that at the moment we have a feeling, and that feeling really, when we go through that discernment, came from a thought. And so that thought then, when you have the choice of, is this good or is it bad? I don't know. Where's the opportunity or the gift behind what's happening? And so, can you think of any time in your life that there was a situation that you thought, oh no, this is going to be horrible, but it actually turned out to be quite good? There's a silver lining behind that.
I get it. I get it. What I'm getting here is, I think we need to distinguish between the raising of self-awareness and the discernment or the judgment and the judgment faculty. At least in my experience, they are separate. Meaning, like, I train in Kung Fu, have for a long time. I've been a long time meditator. My form of meditation is simply self-awareness. You focus on your breath, on a place between your eyes,
Mhm.
on this energy center. You focus and you just let things come up and you detach yourself from the thoughts. And yeah, thoughts lead to feelings and feelings lead to mindset. The deeper you go, the more you're aware of what's happening beneath in your subconscious. Okay. And you're aware of the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything that comes out and in a non-judgmental way. Okay. That I've always considered to be a way to develop self-awareness. So you know yourself better, you know where you're coming from, you know what's lurking behind the surface. That's different, and in that setting, it's only dedicated to self-awareness. In a separate setting is when you make decisions as to, is this thought, feeling, or mindset appropriate per a different, per the circumstances. Um, so do you see the difference between the two?
Yes, I do. Yes, and one of the main differences as it applies to emotional intelligence is many times after we have a feeling, we just react. And feelings are emotions, and so to be more aware of, oh, I'm having a feeling, and rather than just reacting, to step back a little bit. And so then you move into that self-awareness piece that you're talking about. And that
Okay.
means that you have a higher emotional intelligence. You're more aware of yourself and more aware of others as well. And then you can choose to communicate appropriately past that.
So the emotional intelligence combines the two, the
Yes,
self-awareness and the judgment, the discernment.
yes, definitely.
Okay. So if I'm at the dinner table with my wife and she says something, I say, why the heck to say, I say to her, why'd you heck to say that? And she says, stop saying why'd you heck to say that? Ask me nicer. So so the self-awareness is, ooh, I wasn't aware that I kept saying that. And the judgment part is, I'd better come up with something, a better way of saying what I'm saying the next time I have dinner. So I might be able to say, why the heck do you say that in a different setting? But at least in this setting, I need to change my communication style. So is that an example of employing both?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And because your awareness of your own emotional intelligence is that you're noticing that the person that you're communicating is not receiving the way it's meant to be received.
Right.
And also that part enables you to have a greater emotional intelligence to others as well. So you felt it in the first place because you noticed it. And then also you're noticing the vibes that are coming from your wife from an emotional standpoint. And so versus completely oblivious, you continue to say the same thing every time you sit down at the dinner table, and she's
Right.
continually upset over that, and you're also still oblivious of it. And so what it really affects hugely is the communication with others.
Right. And you just said that raising your emotional intelligence in one setting can lead to increasing your emotional intelligence in another setting.
No
Like
question.
there's a certain synergy among the settings in our life, meaning if I become more emotionally intelligent with somebody in my family, that predisposes me to becoming a little bit more emotionally intelligent with somebody at work. Is
Yeah,
correct?
because it comes back to that piece of self-awareness that you talked about. Because part of that EQ is the awareness of what your emotions are, and as well as the awareness of the emotions around you, of the people around you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So getting back to methods, you're talking about simple actions, tapping or meditating or breathing or whatever the tactic is to make yourself aware of what are doing.
Exactly. And it brings you back to the moment. And so as you get more and more practiced on that, you can bring yourself back to the moment faster. And whereas if you're, I'll say, hijacked even stronger, if there's emotion that's very strong, then it will take longer for you to come back. And so when you do come back, then you can act and act and communicate within yourself and to others with a chosen, aware response versus just a reaction. And so, but also you need to be, like in the situation with you talked about with your wife, you need to be also aware of how somebody else is reacting too. So how you're reacting and how somebody else is reacting, there's two components to that.
So, does that mean that emotional intelligence is a shared, um, it has a shared quality? And if you're so dependent on other people for the feedback of who you are, and if you, and if changing, improving your communication style is evidence of your becoming more intelligent. So does that mean, I mean, do I have a separate emotional intelligence from you, or when we're together, are we sharing the same kind of mindset or whatever you
That's a
want to
great
call it?
question. And so it really does start with you. So the more aware you are of your feelings, the more aware you'll be of others. And then, so it does start with you. And then with the others part, some people may hijack you and sort of touch the buttons that get you riled up fast, and others not so much. And so it comes with practice and versatility, but you need to know yourself first to have that awareness of how you think and how you perceive things and how you feel about those things, and then to be able to process those, so then you can communicate back to that person what's important for you to respond to.
Okay. Um, and they're doing the same.
Yes,
So,
or not.
right.
Exactly. So that's the thing is, many times we come across people that have very low emotional intelligence. Doesn't mean, again, like we said last time, it has no bearing on their IQ. But as far as your EQ goes, they could not be very self-aware and not be very aware of you and your emotions. And so you notice that in their communication style.
It seems to me then that we should pick and choose people to associate with who would do the same kind of work we're doing in terms of becoming more, raising our EQ.
Well, there's a lot of work being done with even corporate teams, for an example, that a really highly effective corporate team has high emotional intelligence, because that means they are communicating more effectively together. And then they get that synergy. Where the communication drops and the emotional intelligence drops, then they're not as effective. They don't have that synchronicity.
In the few minutes we have left, I'll give you an example of that. When I was in college, um, there was a seminar given by a guy who ran a school in New England to teach people carpentry. And and the project was, you'd sign up, you'd pay, you'd show up in Vermont somewhere for a summer, and you'd actually build a house.
Mhm.
He would teach you the skills. So I attended the seminar, and being an insurance guy, I'm sure I'm the one that asked the question. I said, "How do you cover liability insurance?" And he goes, "I have no liability insurance." I'm like, "Really?" I said, "Why?" I said, "Aren't you afraid of somebody getting hurt and then suing you?" And he goes, "I'll tell you what." He goes, "We go through exercises of group development, vibe building," he said, "where we become very sensitive to each other, and we share an awareness and what the other is doing." He goes, "I haven't had an accident yet." He goes, "because we're in sync, and because um, I reduce the possibility of somebody picking up some kind of board and swinging it, moving it here, and oops, somebody's standing right there, because I have helped people become sensitized to their surroundings and especially to the people around them. That's kind of an example of what you're talking about, that synergy. And I
Mhm.
was kind of amazed, but I'm like, good for him. And so it seems like that 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 with a group that, like you're talking about, the corporate groups, they can accomplish a whole lot of synergy with the right exercises.
No question, no question. And that it's connected to communication styles as well. And so we all have different communication styles, but uh, the 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 higher your emotional intelligence, the more versatile you are to communicate with people with different communication styles than
Right. That's very interesting. Well, Frank, this is good. And we have a few more um, episodes to go. Is there anything you want to add today about methods for becoming self-aware?
just to add that it takes practice, and the fact that you're thinking about it is a good start. There's a lot of tools and resources in the world to be able to engage with to get better at that intentionally. But just to increase your awareness uh, is the very first step. And sometimes even the most practiced, highly emotionally intelligent people still get hijacked and still find themselves in the middle of something that they realize then that, oh, I've been hijacked here. But with practice and awareness, with the intention of that, you'll get much better communication within yourself and have more peace within yourself and much better communication with others.
Very good. So, Frank, I think you can expect a few hundred calls from people who want you to fix their marriage.
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
good luck with that, right?
that would be great. And
Yeah.
fix their business marriage. Partners need to do the same thing. So I get that. Very
Oh,
good once. I'm sorry.
I just one thing I'll add is I had a call today with the daughter of one of my clients, and a 22-year-old person that is being hijacked all the time because the people that are around her, not her parents, but people that she works with, are not emotionally intelligent. And so, to give her the tools to help navigate through that was a good example. And really it starts with her. It starts with her awareness and her tools, because we can't control others, but we can figure ourselves out first. And so, that's what emotional intelligence is about, number one.
Very good.
Yeah.
You're a helpful guy. All right. Thank you for joining us. And I
Thanks for having
really
me.
look forward to our next episode. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.